Well, hello ladies and gentlemen, and in this episode, in this video, we're going to look at using G to create the MVC. And G is a magical tool. It really is magical because it creates the code for you. And there's nothing better than something writing code for you. So let's have a look at how G works. Right, first of all, we need to have netbeans running. Now you'll see I've removed the country controller from controllers. I've removed the country model, country, from models, and I've removed the folder country from views. Now, if you'd like to keep these, then you can rename them. But if you do rename them, you have to remember that you'll need to rename some of the class names inside as well for them to work. So what we're actually going to do today is use G to create the system for us. So let's just start our browser a moment, and here we are. The browser has started up. Okay. Now what we need to do is we need to start G. So remove index.php and type in G. And you should get this. Now if you haven't got pretty URLs installed, you'll need to leave index.php, put a question mark, and then r equals G after it. Okay, so, but if you're using pretty URLs, this is what you should have, just G. Now this is G, as you can see, it's a magical tool that can write code for you. So the first thing we have to do, because we're modeling data, is actually create a model. So come down to the model generator and click Start. Now we need to put in the table name, and it's actually connected to the database, and it's found that there's one called country. Now we need to give it a name, the model a name, and notice it's got a capital C for country. Okay, you can place your mouse over. Oops, for some unknown reason the system is going very slow today again. I think my hard drive is about to fail. I'm not too happy with Seagate drives because this is the second Seagate that's failed or is about to fail on me. I've just bought a Western Digital to try and copy the data off. So here we go. Right, okay. So you can actually place your mouse over the top and have a look at what they do. We're going to actually just do the table prefix for now, just in case you are using table prefixes. And then we're going to come down and we're going to do enable I18N. I'll explain that a bit later on, but if you remember from the last video, I did mention about internationalization, and that's what this is. For this video, or for this, we don't actually need the rest. So bring it down and click on Preview. Okay, and when it's done, you'll see it's going to create it in models. This is the template it's going to use. Okay, you can actually click on this to see what it's going to create, and you can see, ooh, there's all sorts of interesting things in there. We'll come to why you can do that later. And then you've got a number of options. Now this is in green, which means that it's okay to create, you're not going to do anything. And it's ticked, which means that when you click generate, it will generate it. If you already had a model called country and there were no changes, then this would be grey and the create box would be unticked. And if you'd made some changes, it would be orange, and again the create box would be unticked. You'd have to actually manually tick those, but because we're creating it for the first time, it's there, and we'll click generate. As you probably saw, we had a and you can now see it's created the model. Now if you remember from the last time, it's put in the code template, it's put in some rules, but you'll notice that there's an extra rule, which is code has to be unique, and it's put in the attribute labels that we did, but this time it's actually put in a system to allow the translation. Now we haven't got the translation system set up. There would be a section called messages here, and this is something which we'll do later, but it's always good to have the translation system, because with multi-language, multi-country, then it just makes your life a lot easier later on if you have to then add a translation. So just do this from the beginning and it makes life much easier. So what happens is that it's going to be called app, and this is what it will actually translate, and you'll be able to then translate name into nom, for example, or nama or something like that, and put it into a file in messages, which would then allow it to be translated into French or Spanish or whatever. Okay, so as you can see, it's created all the code for you, and you don't have to do anything in there. So what's next? So next we now need to create the Crud. Crud stands for create, read, update and delete. So first of all we need to have the model class. Now you actually have to specify the path. So always remember that you have to specify the path. That's very important. Next we need the search model. And notice it's capital C and capital S. We now need a controller class. So and we'll call this, if you remember, country controller. So it has to have the right names. So, don't know why that's showing as an error. Now you can leave the view path empty because it'll actually create one called country in views, but if you want to call it something else you can, but it's usually a good idea to leave that as is. We're going to enable internationalization, and this time we're going to enable PJAX, which will allow for sorting and things like that automatically. Again, if you put your mouse over it, it'll explain what it's going to do. So without refreshing the page, it will automatically do that. Again, come down to preview, and oops, we have an error. So it should be models, not model. So this is another nice thing. It'll catch the various different errors that it finds. So we've altered that. And this time, as you can see, it's going to create a number of files in different places. So it's going to create a controller, is going to create another model, which is a search model, and then it's going to create 6 views, one of which is the index. And again, they're all green, which means that they don't exist. They're all ticked, so they will be created. So we will hit generate. And if we come down, you can see that it's been generated and there are no errors. Right, so I'm going to close Chromium down. And if we go in here, you can see we've got a country controller, we've now got a country model and a country search model, and in views we've now got the country folder again, plus we have 6 different views that we're going to look at. So let's have a look at these. So the country model is very similar to the one which we created ourselves. With the exception that we're using translations, and there is a rule for uniqueness. The country search allows you to search. We put some search boxes at the top of the index, and again it's got a number of rules in there, and it actually extends the from country so it can actually do the searching, and when you actually do a search it will call this function here. The country controller, now this is actually put in a lot more usages clauses in here, and we'll see why in a moment. But you can see it's using models, models, country search, models, country. Okay, and it's actually put in some behaviors which we'll discuss later. This is really so that when you delete something, it has to be sent as a post and not a get message by the browser. Now, if you remember, we actually created just an action index. So this is the one it's created for us, and as you can see, we actually created a link page or a pagination system. This doesn't have it at the moment, but we will look at adding that a bit later on. But it's also added a number of other actions. So we've got action view, action create, action update, and action delete, action find model, which is for the search. And I'll let you have a look at each one of those and see what happens. But basically it creates a new model and then it operates on that, finding the information that you've asked it to do. Right, if we come to index here, again there's a lot more in index, and this time instead of a pagination we've actually got a grid view using the grid widget. But before that, we've got pjax, which allows us to filter and search without actually having to refresh the page. I'll go through this a bit later, but you can see that we've got the code, the name, and the population, and these are the columns that will be in the table in the grid. We then have create. Now this will be very simple because it actually calls form, which is here. You can see underscore form, and so basically all this does is set up the page and then calls form. Now form is called in a number of areas, and this actually has the fields in it which allow you to change the sizes in here. Sorry, to change the data as you wish. Okay, on that you then have your search, and this goes at the top of the grid, so you have your search here. So as you can see, it's pjax data, so we're going to do it without refreshing. Create, so when you want to add a new record, again this just calls form. Update, again this calls form, just so that you can update it. And finally view views the record, so all it does is actually create the detail view. So you've got the header here, and then you've got the detail view with the columns here. Now the header actually has two buttons, one which is update and one which is delete, and if you try to delete you get a confirmation, and it has to be sent by post, by the post method, which if you remember is here. So somebody can't just type it in to the URL, they can't type a URL in to delete, it won't work. So let's see what it's all done, and we'll click run. Now when we click run you'll see, whoa, there's nothing there. Well, this is because we actually have to tell it that we want country. So remove index and just type in country, nothing after country, just type it in and press enter. And wow, look at that, you've got a grid, And this is all without writing a line of code. We haven't written any code at all, none whatsoever. We've just created the database, put some data in the database, and we've got all of this. So we've got a system to create countries. We have a system in which we can actually sort. So we can sort by name. We can search for a particular one. And you just get the particular one, or not, as the case may be. And what you also get, you can view a particular record. So you've got these icons down the right hand side, so you can view a record. And here you can update the record or you can delete the record. So for example, GB, if we want to update, we can go directly to update. And I do know that the population of Great Britain is now 67,500,000. So we can update that. And we've updated it. We can go back with the breadcrumbs and you can see that it's updated there. So we've done all of this without writing a word of code. We've done nothing. We've just created the database. That's all we've done. Now, if we want to do pagination on this, say you've got a very large database and it's going to put a lot of data on the screen, you can then paginate that. And to do that, if you remember, we go into the country controller and we need to add something to the data provider. So what's very nice about the grid view is it actually comes with a pagination already set in it, so we don't actually have to create any extra pagination. We just have to tell it what we want the pagination to do. So we've got a data provider, we just need to add to it. So set pagination, and it's the page size that needs to be set, and we'll set this as we did before to 5. Close that off. So why have we got to introduce variable? Okay, so we've written one line of code which is set pagination. We will save this and we will run it. We have to type in country again, press enter, and this time you can see we've only got 5 results in the table, and if we click on 2 we go to the second part of the table. So you've got pagination automatically built in. Now let's have a look. Here you've got an index number. It's just a number produced by by the system. If you don't want it, you can very easily remove it, and this is done in views. So if we go into views, index, and you'll see here that there's a class saying serial column. So if we just comment that out, come back here and refresh, you can see it's gone. It's as simple as that. So that is how you can create programs without actually writing any code. You can actually create web pages without writing any code. You do get the basic template, but you can actually do quite complex websites like this, which include foreign keys and that type of thing, without having to write any code. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. Please like, share and subscribe. My name's John, and I'll see you next time.